Carla mentioned that I work up at HAF in child and youth programs. The other part of my job, as the slides start to come up, I also work the inclusion piece, which is taking care of children and youth enrolled in the child development centers and the youth center, the school age program. I have responsibility for child care fees, so don't be too bad about that, as well as background checks. That's my primary responsibility for child care workers. So with all that on my plate, this is actually the most rewarding of all of the jobs that I have. And I had an opportunity to be doing this since I've been on staff for about 7 years. So are we going to have slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Not that I can't work without them. But we do want to begin with respite care, that being the good way to start because it's a bit of a success story. As you know, we've gone from, the program has pretty much evolved, but because of all the hard work of the group last year, because of the Spouses Forum a couple of years ago and Secretary James, we were able to increase the number of hours from 12 per month to 40 per month. And even at 40 per month, I'm being told by our vendor that we're not even using 40 per month, which is kind of shocking. But I think that's just a matter of, letting the word travel. So I'm hoping that if you're not using respite, this will encourage you to do so, and also to be able to share this with the rest of your community. So I think we can go to the next slide. We like to start with what our mission is, and it's threefold. I mean, we're here to help you balance your mission with your family. And the way we do that is providing quality, affordable, and available child care. And in this case, I kind of feel like for respite care, we hit all three. The quality being that we've got good providers that we've screened and trained to provide that. The available, meaning that it's widely available now across the Air Force. And of course, affordable in the fact that it's free for everyone. So you really can't beat that. So let's move forward, please. So we started in July of 2001. And the way we do this is through an enhanced referral process where the primary care is usually provided in the child's home. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to be provided there. It could be provided in a family child care home or in a child care center, maybe a center that has very specialized medical type of support. But I'm going to say about 97% of our care actually takes place in your home. Because we know that that's where your child is the most comfortable, that's where you're comfortable with your child being. It's just a lot more convenient for everyone. So we're providing that care for 0 to 18. We have had a couple of times where we've done an exception to policy. You might have a 19-year-old in the home that for whatever reason isn't transitioning exactly on schedule. And so we have been able to provide it for children slightly, or teens, slightly older, but unfortunately this isn't a program for adults. This is child care funding that's being used for this, so it is limited to children. I mentioned that we're doing the 40 hours per month, and of course we provide care for siblings 13 years and under, and that's so parents can really get respite. If you've just got your one child at home who has special needs and you've still got the typically developing sibling that's along with you, is not really respite for mom and dad. We really want you to take time away to recharge and do whatever it is that you need to do with that time. So what you may not be aware of is that stateside we provide the care via our partner, Child Care Aware of America. They are at the top of the nation as far as child care resource and referral, which makes them the perfect agency because what they do is they go out and get partners within your local communities. It could be Easter Seals in Washington, D.C. That's the one that always comes to my mind because I happen to be there. But it could be any sort of child care agency within your community, and they have an agreement with them. And they're the boots on the ground, the ones that actually do the work in order for you to have the respite care. Overseas, slightly different because we don't have contracts there. So what we're using is our own resources within the 4 Support Squadron, and that's going to be family child care providers or the Child Development Center. And on occasion, we've even been able to go out and contract in the local community, but that's done on a case-by-case basis depending on what we have existing and available. And it's a little bit tougher overseas. I'm going to go ahead and just own it right now. It's a little bit tougher overseas, but it's not for a lack of desire. It's about finding providers and having the capacity within the Child Development Center to be able to offer that sort of respite. And as Carla and Jeree mentioned, I'll be here all week with you, so I know that you'll have some specific questions that come up, particularly as it pertains to OCONUS, and if we don't answer them here, certainly we can do that later. Next slide, please. So we've made the program available for active duty, and at the request of our Guard and Reserve, we included them into the fold as long as they've been activated for at least 31 days. There's a couple ways to apply for respite care. One is online through the Child Care Aware website, and one is using the 800 number. You can definitely talk to your EFMP Family Support Coordinator. They're very familiar with the program, and they can help direct you and facilitate that connection with our partner agencies. And if you happen to be OCONUS, then that's a matter of going to the Child Development Center or the Family Child Care Coordinator. We don't have family child care in every location because we don't have homes on every installation, so we can't do it everywhere. Aviano be an example. But that's why we do it in the Child Development Center. And so the way we validate is to make sure that everyone's Q-coded. And then we're just trying to find out if the child has moderate or severe special needs. And the way that's done, it's a little bit different than some of the other services. We just have you take a form to your doctor, and your doctor's going to identify whatever the needs of your child are, and they're going to decide whether it's moderate or severe. And that's really all that's required. At this point, when we created the program, there were so many hours for moderate and so many for severe, but at this point, everybody gets the same amount of hours. So really, what it boils down to is if your children just have mild special needs, asthma for an instance, and you're Q-coded for that, that wouldn't qualify you for respite care. Next slide, please. So a little bit about our providers. Child Care Aware of America actually does recruitment within your local community. They screen them in the same way that we screen child care workers on the installation, and then they do training. Some basic training for being a provider on timesheets, how to work with children with special needs, and then, if need be, training on whatever specific special need your child has. And training might actually come from you, because who knows your children better than you do. Here's some of our recruitment sources. I heard this morning that I think it was at Fairchild, you were saying that you're going out into the local community, helping our local partner agency to recruit. And that's very helpful. One of the beauties of this particular program is that respite providers can come from anywhere. They can even be a family member of yours. Maybe your parents you're lucky enough that your parents happen to be in the same location that you are. They can register, go through the process, and of course, who knows your children as well as their grandparents. So the beauty of it is that they could be registered to be a provider. And again, the intent is for you to be able to get a little bit of time away. So we're not really limiting where we get our providers from. Next slide, please. So it was because of parents like yourself that we've actually made a lot of changes. I mentioned in the beginning that we were only for active duty, and Guard and Reserve were like, hey, what about us? So we included Guard and Reserve. And then we were at a certain number of hours for moderate, and a certain number of hours for severe, and a certain number of hours for deployed. And aside from being confusing to everyone, you spoke up and you said, hey, we all want the same amount of hours. So we made it so that everybody had the same amount of hours. We added sibling care because parents asked for it, because you recognize the fact that, you're not really going to get respite until the rest of the kids are taken care of. And then the biggest jump was going from 12 to 40 hours. And we've got a couple comments that and again, this is why this is the best part of my job, the best piece of my portfolio is hearing from parents and understanding what the program means to you. And, bottom line is that it helps you to be a better airman, to be better within your family. And so that's just why I love the job. Just a couple of quotes from parents. Next slide, please. So again, a little bit about the respite care program. I wanted you to have some contact information. I'm assuming you're going to get copies of the slides. Okay. So the overseas respite is run through the Air Force Services activity. That's the operational arm of the Child and Youth Programs Policy Office. And again, it happens within the Child Development Center and the Family Child Care Homes. You can see where it takes place in a family child care home. That's our preference. That's where we would like for it to take place first, because we know we've got providers that can come into your home or you can come into the child's home. And child development centers are typically at 100% capacity. So it's really hard to make room to get other children in. And their hours may not work for you, as far as that goes. Maybe you want to have date night on Friday night and we close at 6 o'clock. So child development centers for respite doesn't always work. But the two things that I wanted to make sure that you knew is, number one, if you have any difficulties when you're OCONAs, connecting with the Family Child Care Coordinator, the Child Development Center Director. They have a flight chief, Child and Youth Services flight chief, who works for the Force Support Commander. So you've got those resources. But if none of that works for you, you can always go straight to the Air Force Services activity to Ruthine Hearns, and she's the one who starts the application process. Okay? And just a note, I don't know if we have anybody geographically separated from your traditional installation, like a recruiter, for instance. We have been able to go out, and Child Care Aware does this in particular stateside, where they'll go in on their own without a local partner agency, which we would normally have, but they would go into the community and find a few providers that they can train and screen so that they can take care of everybody, not just individuals that are assigned to an Air Force installation. Next slide. Now, this slide is not just about respite care, but I like to show it because I think a lot of people don't know all of the child care programs that we offer. You know that we're within the Child Development Center, the Youth Center, within school age centers. We have another piece of, and we provide a huge number of hours through the expanded child care program. And this is a program that's designed to meet your needs outside of the traditional hours. So if you work shift work, as an example, we might be able to get you into the 24/7 child care. Respite care is on there, obviously. Individuals who have to work more than 50 hours a week, and you'll say your children are in the Child Development Center for the 50 hours, but you have to work the weekend because of some mission requirement. The expanded child care program will allow you to go into a family child care home, and you don't have to pay anything extra for the hours above and beyond your 50 hours. And so that's kind of what this boils down to. Not only does it identify and take care of some specific mission needs, but it doesn't cost you anything more than the 50 hours of care that you're already paying for in the Child Development Center or the school age program or the family child care program. So the other thing on the right there in the purple is the subsidy program. And the subsidy program, what it does is it balances out what the family child care provider cost, because they're a private business, so they can set their rates however they like. But what it does is it allows you to pay at the 50-hour rate that you would pay in a Child Development Center based on your total family income. And then the Air Force picks up the difference in what the provider charges. So sometimes you can't get into the Child Development Center. Our first available slot is within a family child care home. might cost a little bit more, we're going to pick up the difference there for you. Okay. Next slide, please. So that's all about Respite and the expanded child care program. Because I had the stage for a few minutes, I wanted to be able to talk to you about actually enrolling in the child development centers or the school age program. And what we call it is inclusion. It's a term that not just we use, but all the other services, we do it via an inclusion action team. So if you've ever heard the term IAT, inclusion action team, that's the process that we go through in order to enroll children into our programs and make sure that they have the support and accommodations that they need in order to be successful. So a couple of the policy pieces, we can scroll past that one if you want to go to the next slide. I just wanted to make sure you had that as a reference. But here's some of our elements of inclusion. Number one, we want to make sure that our policies support inclusion. And of course, that's how our AFI is written. We have instructional guides for the installation so that they know how to run an inclusion action team. You know, we're talking about accommodations to support children in their ability to play, learn, socialize, participate in the daily activities. We're going to make modifications to the facility or to the staffing or to the activity plans. We might develop behavior support strategies so that your child can be successful. You know, group care is not for everyone. And, you know, children with special needs need a little bit more specialized care so that they can be successful in that large group environment. And so we're there to kind of help facilitate that. Partnerships with families, that's at the top of our list. We need to make sure that we've got a good communication strategy with you because, again, who knows your children better than you do? We adjust the ratios. Sometimes your child might need a 1-to-1 ratio, and our ratios within a preschool room might be 12-to-1. So we might bring in an extra provider to make sure that we've got that 1-to-1 ratio. And of course, we want to make sure that we've trained and we provide the right level of support to our program staff. Next slide, please. So the process is the inclusion action team. And what we want to do, ideally, is to know about your children's special needs prior to enrollment. We want to be able to make sure that when your child enters the program, that they're going to be entering with all of the accommodations necessary for them to be successful. Can only know that if we get it prior to enrollment. And sometimes things just happen. You know, your child gets diagnosed with something after they're already in the program, and that's perfectly fine. We'll still have an inclusion action team meeting in order to come up with some strategies. What I think is important to know is that everything is customized. It's based on your child's specific need, and it was good to hear General Toth mentioned that this morning, and the fact that you know, each and every airman who has a child or a family member with special needs is different, and so we have to recognize that and make sure that our program meets their needs. Next slide, please. So here's the team. Here's what it consists of. The chair is going to be the flight chief, the Child and Youth Services flight chief. Our program managers are going to be part of the team. EFMP medical or the medical advisor that is identified at the installation is going to be part of it. Our family support point of contact will be there, the school liaison, whoever it is that we need in order to get a really good picture of what your child needs and is able to provide us, being the child care program, with the information we need in order to make specific accommodations, again, so your child can be successful. But all of this can't be done without the parents. So the parents are included as part of the team. And so when they have these meetings, and it could be once a month, it could be less frequent depending on the size of the location. Maybe it's only when, because the program is so small, it'll only be when a child enters the program who's been identified with special needs. But whenever it happens, we're wanting, hoping, expecting that the parents will participate in that process with us so that we can truly understand what your child's needs are. Next slide, please. A few of the responsibilities. Obviously, it's going to be identifying what the needs are and developing individualized accommodations and support. We're going to develop an action plan, something that gives us a document to follow so that we know that we're on the right track, that we're doing everything that we said we were going to do in the meeting. And of course, part of that's going to be making sure that our staff have the right training. Again, that training may come from the medical community, but it could very well come from you, the parents, because again, who knows your child's needs better than you do and what supports them the best, etc. I think one area that we could probably do a little bit better in, but we work hard on every day, is to make sure that we have that follow-up communication with parents so that they understand what's working and what's not working, so that you can help us to support the accommodations that we're making within the center and that we are supporting what your needs are, or maybe what the school has identified. You know, it's not required to bring your IEP in, but if you know that the school is working on, you know, these 3 strategies to help your child be successful, and you want to share that with us and you want us to implement that, then that's what we're here for. We're here to help your child be the most successful that they can be. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the plan. These are some of the components to the plan, several that I've already mentioned here. Ratios, maybe we need to make sure that we know exactly when to administer medication and how it gets administered. Strategies for supporting the personal needs of the child, for sleeping, for feeding, that sort of thing. If we need to get special equipment, or you have special equipment, I've seen some parents come in and they have 2 wheelchairs, one for home and one for school, and they provide the one at school so that they don't have the, I don't know, the logistics of having to transport, you know, the wheelchair back and forth. We have a means for being able to store that sort of thing, having it available right in the classroom for when you bring your child in. We want to make sure that we have good emergency action plans so that we know what to do in case of an emergency, because some children have some pretty significant health medical needs, and we want to make sure that we can take care of that on the spot without you having to run over to the center. We're going to let you know when there's an issue. Obviously, we're going to let you know immediately, but we want to take care of as much as we can so that you can focus on your mission. Next slide, please. Oh, that's the end. So Carla asked me to do 40 minutes, and I did 20, so that means we've got 20-ish minutes if you would like to, if you have any questions. Yes, sir?
So just a couple of things. You started off, last year the focus on the respite care piece was a little bit of the messaging that the previous secretary said, hey, we're going from 12 to 40, but it had been 6 to 8 months and no action. When we went back to our bases to ask about it, it wasn't there. And part of that was funding piece, so we have identified, re-educated, that was a funding piece, and now it's in play. What I would say with regards to the fact that we might not be using the 40, it's not necessarily a matter of folks not using it. I think it's more of a factor of the providers. So what I would say is, one thing to dig into would be look at the ratio of EFMP families on a given installation or GSU, look at the ratio of providers and identify that gap, because right now we're still having a problem finding enough providers to cover all the people that want the 40 hours. We can't deliver it yet. So I don't think it's a matter of they don't want it. We just don't have access to it because of lack of providers. I think there's also a stigma. I think we need to educate folks, and I'm one of them. And we were eligible for respite care. I probably didn't use it till I was starting a lieutenant colonel, and you know, we've got chiefs on our base that use it now, and we've had to kind of talk ourselves, hey, it's okay to use it. This is available for anybody. If you're eligible, I tell you, why use that date night once a month at least, you know, just as a sanity check for my wife and I, and that's important. I think you need to educate as you all go back, talk to airmen, even talk to your leaders. Tell them it's okay, boss, to go take respite care you've earned, and treat yourself to some time away. It's important. But I think we need to do a better job as airmen and families to say that we should use it if it's available. And I still see a little bit of that stigma that some people don't want to. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just a personal thing, but yeah. I think the next big challenge, and I looked at your extended child care options, and I don't know if it's just at Fairchild, I'm sure it's at other bases. It's the infant special needs child that we're having the most difficulty finding providers. You get from 0 to 9 months, and they have some complicated special needs. We're not able to find those providers at the CDC. We're not able to find it through the FCC process. We're looking through subsidies to see what's in the community or the state, but we're having a hard time trying to find a provider that can meet the needs of a family that's got a 3-month-old at on base right now, and they're having a tough time trying to find somebody that can help. And I think we need to find, or at least educate the Airmen and Family Readiness Office a little bit more on what are all the options available, because I feel like we're kind of doing feeling around in the dark on that, trying to figure out where can we get some funds. If it's funds that they need to go to a downtown provider to get that, we'll figure that out. But we just don't know where to go when it's an infant, and I think we're going to see more of those challenges at other bases, just because we don't have those providers available.
Well, thank you for those comments, and I'm going to actually work backwards to what you just said in addressing some of those. The infant care, not even for children with special needs, but just overall, the capacity is so much smaller because we have a 1-to-4 ratio, 1 adult to 4 infants. But it's not just within the Air Force or within DOD. There just are not enough infant spaces in child care, period. And so we are challenged just like the rest of the United States is in trying to find providers. So your discussion, a comment about not having enough providers to meet that 40 hours, I think is very valid. A couple of things that we do, and I like being able to talk to you because I know that you'll go back and share this with your fellow airmen and talk to the right people on the base. But there are times when we just can't care for a child in the Child Development Center for whatever reason. I mean, it may just be a very complicated medical situation, but that there is child care programs outside of the installation where we go and work with, and we establish a contract of sorts so that we can provide the specialized medical needs that they need, and you're still paying only what you would pay if you were on base. So I say that in that if anybody is experiencing extended delays for getting into the child care center, part of it is a waiting list thing. But the other piece is if they just don't have the capacity or the ability to be able to meet every need that your child has, we have other options. It's like when we're Oconus, we don't have a child care center in Australia, but apparently we have airmen in Australia. I didn't know that. But we've contracted with a child development center there. Okay, anyway, they're taken care of. The same goes in England if they're not located near a base. We go out into the community. What's important is for us to know where the need is, and making sure that you're vocal enough to speak on behalf of your children. And I know that you are, but it's those that are vocal that really gets our attention even more to where we can go and put those contracts in place. And I appreciate your comment about not necessarily using all the 40 hours or not even accessing respite when you're eligible for it, sir. I'm glad that you said that because we talked about it early this morning. And it's just amazing how self-reliant parents are, Air Force parents, probably military parents, are at taking care of yourself. And so the last thing that you're there is to ask for, hey, I need a few hours away because I just need to be able to go to the grocery store without, you know, dragging the kids along, or maybe I just need a nap, or a date night. And for whatever your use is, really the only thing you can't use respite for is to go to work, because that's what regular childcare is for. But, you know, being so self-reliant and that sort of thing, a lot of people aren't using respite. And while I completely appreciate that, as you continue to share the success of, you know, your respite provider, if you're having that, I hope that others will tap into that, because as you said, just one night a week for a couple hours may make all the difference in the world. So thank you for those. And I made a note here about the provider recruitment for the 40 hours. We have not told any of our partner agencies to stop recruiting and to only recruit 2 or 3 or whatever they may think that they need, because that 40 hours, that's a big block of time. And if you only have a couple of providers and 20 airmen, there won't be enough to go around. So they are actively recruiting every day. Yes, ma'am?
When have they instituted specialized training for your CDC workers?
When?
Yeah, because up to at least a couple of years ago, there wasn't specialized training, and children with special needs would come in and teachers would be absolutely oblivious to what this child needed, and they were there in the classroom. And they didn't have the specialized training. So I don't know if this is just something that is we just got the funds to start training them on, because everything else they were trained on had nothing to do with the special needs. It was most of us parents coming in and teaching that teacher, this is what you do in this case, and getting the medical files, and this is how you do these procedures, because they weren't getting the training.
Well, it's always been in place. Whether or not you did a great job of it in the past, maybe not. I mean, your experience might be a prime example. Part of it starts with the fact that we need to know, you know, what needs your children have. And a lot of parents come in and don't tell us. So let's assume that the parents do come in and tell us what their child needs. I mean, honestly, for you to be able to come in and say, you know, my son or daughter needs X, Y, and Z, this is what helps them to thrive, to be successful, etc., we're going to rely on that first and foremost. But if there's additional training, for instance, the Department of Defense has a contract with KIT. It's called Kids Included Together. And they are a fabulous resource out in San Diego, where our staff can call them and say, hey, we've got a child that has XYZ. You know, we've talked with the family, we've talked with medical, but we're looking for some other strategies to help this child be successful. In addition to that, so they've got this hotline that they can call, but they also have a library of webinars that they can tap into for different developmental needs, in particular autism, that they can tap into to learn a little bit more. It's really not a matter of funding, it's a matter of finding the resource. So if the parent is the resource, or if the parent knows where the resource is, that's what we want to know in order to be able to tap into it.
Have they allotted hours for training just on special needs? I mean, just to give them a broad spectrum of what they may need to look for?
Yes, they do. They have, I don't know if you're aware, but child care providers come in an entry level, and after about 18 months, they've completed 15 modules, and one of those modules is working with children with special needs. So it gives them a real good broad overview of what to be aware of, how to work with parents, how to work with some of the less complicated sort of needs that a child may have. And from there, it's just a matter of, you know, it's kind of that on-time training, whatever is needed at that point, that's what we're going to tap into, that's what we're going to dig into. So if that's not happening at your location, I would definitely say make sure and talk with the director, and if that doesn't, and the training curriculum specialist. I'm not sure if you're aware, but every center has a TNC, a training and curriculum specialist. They're the ones that have the bachelor's degree in early childhood development. They're the ones that are working on the curriculum. They're the ones working with staff. They train the staff. So the staff have that resource, but so do you, as well as the director. And then of course you can always go to the flight chief. I mean, if we don't want anybody to be sitting back and being frustrated with the type of support, the level of support that you're getting at the installation. So by all means, use that chain of command. I mean, give us an opportunity to try and fix it. But if it's just not there, it's not happening, and you know that there's other things that can be done, we want to know about that. Thank you for asking that question. Yes, ma'am?
Your bases are expedited airport bases. Do you have a minimum of how many providers that you have available for respite care before you assign that base as an expedited base? And secondly, on one of the slides you said that you provide respite for deployed. The same addresses to that, since some of your bases are more deployed heavy than others.
With the second question first, when we first started the program, we gave more hours to families with a deployed airman than individuals that were just, they were at their station. That's gone away since we've taken everybody to 40 hours. So that's really not so much an issue. As far as the expedited and whether or not there are, if that's researched, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe that's a medical or assignment question. We don't. Right. But we don't have a minimum for what we have at each location. So if there's an expedited location and we don't have enough providers, we probably need to know that so that we can work even harder. But we've not told the contractor not to stop recruiting. So, any other questions? I will be here, through tomorrow. So I look forward. Oh, one more.
When you showed the expanded child care closure, you had other things for like mission specific type things. Does that also work with, I know in Minot they have the missile care for the people out doing that, but for locations where members are TDY often and often short notice TDY, is there any specific program or funding allotted for that? I know everyone looks at the child care plan, but if you need to, you single parent, you go to work on Monday and you're told you leave Tuesday, you might not necessarily have the time to enact that plan. Is there a gap filled for that?
We don't have one for TDYs, but I would say probably the extended duty child care would work in that, if you're going to be away, let's say overnight on a TDY, and that's probably rare, that's just one overnight, but let's say it was an overnight, we would use the extended duty care where your child could be taken care of 24 hours in a family child care home. So that's how that would work. Each of the programs were developed based on the need that was identified. The missile care, the RPA care, those came up pretty quick, and it was pretty common that it was almost a no-brainer. We just needed to figure out how to do it. All the funding comes from the same pot of money. So while funding is not unlimited, if we needed to develop another program in order to support whatever that community's needs are, we would do that. The way to make that happen is to again talk within the Child Development Center, or probably more appropriately with the flight chief, who would elevate it to the services activity and say, hey, you know what, we've got a new issue here, and we really think it's having a large impact, and we'd like to see if we can't find a way to compensate with some extra child care in order to take care of these airmen. And at the beginning of the slide, you have my email and my phone number, so you are welcome to let me know whatever concerns you might have in your local community or suggestions for improvement, absolutely, because we take that information however we get it and work from there. Yes, sir.
With the CareAware of America, are the CDC and center providers required to meet a level of training with them before they start day one on their job?
In the Child Development Center?
Yes.
No, it's actually kind of a paraprofessional career field that they could come in at age 18. We do our background checks. We do 40 hours of orientation with them, and then they begin and they work along with a more senior staff. And then during that 18 months, they're going to complete their 15 training modules and annual training, about 24 hours a year that they have to do. And then that takes them to the level, what we would consider a target level child care employee.
To follow on with the expedited basis, has there been any thought of making that a higher certification level for EFMP related matters and special care needs children, because we are focusing now a lot of our EFMP children to those bases and maybe making it a higher level of expertise and training required before stepping in with those jobs and being in situations where they might be alone with the job?
You know, that's a really good suggestion, one that I don't think has been elevated to us yet. I don't know where all the expedited locations are, but I'm in a perfect room to be able to find that out, and then to be able to have that discussion in the office about, you know, expanding the amount of training that we provide as it pertains to children with special needs in those areas. And I think that's a smart thing to do.
Thank you.
So, yes. Yes, sir.
So we have a lot of airmen that are operating outside of Air Force bases that are either being supported by system service or not by a base that really at all left fend for themselves in local communities. How are we pushing this out to them so that they're not having to play catch up and find information, but we're feeding them information?
You know, that's a good question. You know, because I've only addressed it from the aspect of this individual is at, you know, Fort Bragg, Pope, and they need respite care. And what we do is we're addressing it from the time it's identified to go out down and find the providers, but not being able to know where everybody is geographically separated to and who might need that. That's probably something that we need to talk about as a group. But that's a good suggestion. So, but certainly word of mouth helps a lot. And so, you know, as you travel and as you talk to your colleagues, being able to make sure that we're pushing it far and wide is going to help as well.
I noticed one of the things, I've been both the Army Force and the Navy installation, and we were at Newport, you know, when I asked about utilizing respite care, there were radical differences between the two programs. Unfortunately, we couldn't use it as an Air Force family at the Navy base. Because it was very service specific. And I'm not sure if we've actually addressed kind of tearing down those service walls a little bit, because depending on which service you're dealing with, you're going to get radically different programs. Focus, Marine Corps is completely different than Army, Navy. So depending where you're at, I think the respite care piece should, in my mind, a little bit easier from the universal concept to manage as airmen are transitioning to different bases. It's a little bit harder, I think, than going through the actual EFMP process through the services, because we're not quite there. You know, we're looking at universal forms and things like that. But I think the respite care is probably right for a look at coordinating across DoD to make it a little bit easier for, you know, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard to utilize that, to include GSUs. And that's probably where I've seen. I commanded at GSU. That was the toughest situation for my airmen, is being able to utilize the Navies, not have to travel hours to an Air Force base for that level of support or to get questions answered. So I think the respite care and multi-services dealt with that max is maybe a little bit more universal.
Go ahead.
I'd like to address that. I'm Sandra Nichols again with the EFMP Family Support Component. And part of respite, although Ms. Ganote, their office is the lead, or the Office of Primary Responsibility for Respite, we have the responsibility in family support to market that program. And so what we're doing, I've actually reached out to the Army to see if I can do some training for them, for their coordinators, just like we have our family support coordinators in the Air Force. Whenever we have, say, an Army or Navy family come into our family centers, we're always able to reach across the service to ensure that they get respite care. Say an Army member will reach out to the closest Army installation to ensure that that member gets respite care when they come into our centers. And I think part of that is just educating folks, and then also, like you mentioned, marketing the program a little bit better. And then also providing some cross-functional training amongst the services. I think in the Air Force, we do a really good job with taking care of other members, sister services, our installation. We want to ensure that the other services are taking care of our members as well. So that is something that we are discussing, and we will work on that. So thank you.
That's just one other thing in that regard. Yes, the respite program probably is primed for that, and we actually have a working group with the joint services and OSD to just talk about inclusion as a whole and how we will enroll children into the child care centers and that sort of thing. And respite is definitely a piece of that conversation. I mean, I've actually said it myself, and I don't know if it's blasphemy or not, but I was like, I don't know, OSD, you want us to all be the same, then you take on the program. You take the funding and then you do it. So we'll see where that goes. But I think I agree that of all the programs is probably right for that situation. So, yes, ma'am.
You had said word of mouth is the best way. And let's be real, the spouses network can reach far and wide. Is it not possible then to create some sort of binder of information for locations where, that way you don't have families scrambling when they get to a location if they're separated or a joint base or something like that, where they can walk into a CDC or what have you and go, hey, look, this is our situation, what do you have? And the CDC can go, here you go. And it's just a word of mouth, all put continuity binders for parenting.
That's a good suggestion, and rather than take up any more of your time, and I think it might actually steal a little bit of Ms. Nichols' thunder, because she's going to be talking about family support as a whole, and that's where we work together a lot to make sure that the family support coordinators have the resources to be able, to direct families to whatever their specific need is. So rather than address that directly, I think I'll probably leave it to Sandra. And
I was actually going to chime in and speak to that a little bit. That's a great idea. And honestly, that was one of the topics that came up from last year's summit, is how are we marketing some of this? So part of what we're doing in the very near future, and what I mean by that is we're looking at January, and somewhere between January 19 to April 19, depending on how OSN wants us to push this information forward, is that as soon as you are enrolled in EFMP, as soon as you are enrolled, within 4 weeks, you will be getting an orientation of all things EFMP. Within that period of time, all families, it's not going to be mandatory. We cannot mandate spouses to do anything at all, for sure. And but certainly we are offering that within 4 weeks. We want everybody involved in an EFMP family to come to Airmen and Family Readiness so that they can get briefed by all 3 components about all services that are available and answer all of your questions more specific to your installation, especially when it comes to some of those services within respite, community services with family support coordinators can help within the local community, medical support for all of the conditions that you may present with, educational, the DSLOs, the school liaison officers, all of that will be available within 4 weeks of you arriving on station if you are enrolled in EFMP. So that's a movement, absolutely, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you for your time. I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you have during our breaks and in the evening. So